Imagine Albert Einstein waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, realizing he got his calculations wrong. Or Marie Curie standing at her instruments in disbelief thinking, "Oops, maybe that wasn't what I thought." Sounds like science fiction? Yet the history of science is littered with epic blunders, with Eureka moments turned into embarrassing, let me double check that. We're not talking, except in one case, about deliberate frauds or crackpot theories spawned by eccentric minds. No, these are genuine mistakes made by brilliant scientists who sincerely believe they discovered something revolutionary. Spoiler alert, they were dead wrong. Spontaneous generation of life. Aristotle wrote in his History of Animals, 350 BC, that some animals are born from other similar animals, while others arise spontaneously from decaying matter. For over 2,000 years, this idea dominated biology. Mice born from dirty rags, worms from rotting meat, eels from river mud. The recipes were precise. Jan Baptista van Helmont, a Flemish physician and alchemist, published the formula for creating mice in 1648. Place dirty underwear in a jar with wheat grains for 21 days. The smell of the clothes, acting as a ferment, transforms the grain into mice. He swore he'd witnessed it personally. His contemporary Athanasius Kircher provided instructions for generating snakes from women's hair buried in manure. Francesco Redi put the first crack in the theory in 1668. He covered some jars of meat with gauze, leaving others open. Flies and worms appeared only in the open jars, but supporters objected. The gauze prevented the passage of the vital principle in the air. The decisive battle came in 1859. The Paris Academy of Sciences offered the Alhambra Prize of 2,500 francs to whoever could definitively settle the question. Félix Boucher, director of the Natural History Museum in Rouen, published Heterogénie, claiming to have demonstrated spontaneous generation. Boiled and sealed hay infusions always develop microbes. Louis Pasteur accepted the challenge. Between 1860 and 1864, he conducted a series of elegant experiments that would revolutionize biology. His masterpiece was the swan neck flasks, vessels with long curved necks that allowed air to enter freely but trapped dust and germs in the curves like a natural siphon. But the most spectacular experiment was when he took 73 sealed sterile flasks on a journey across France, from the dusty streets of Paris to the Alpine glaciers. At each location, he briefly opened flasks to expose them to local air, then resealed them. The results were dramatic. In Paris, 100% of the flasks developed microbial contamination. In the countryside, only 40%. On the pristine Alpine glaciers, not a single flask showed signs of life. The final blow came on April 7, 1864 at the Sorbonne. Before the French scientific elite, Pasteur showed his swan neck flasks. After months, the broth was still sterile. Breaking the neck, contamination appeared within 24 hours. Life is a germ, and the germ is life, he declared. Spontaneous generation is a chimera. The irony? The theory lasted so long precisely because it seemed obvious. Anyone could see worms appearing from nowhere in meat. It took 2,214 years from Aristotle to Pasteur to understand that life comes only from life. An error that lasted 85 human generations. The Piltdown Man. In December 1912, Charles Dawson, a Sussex lawyer and amateur archaeologist, presented to the Geological Society of London what appeared to be the missing link in evolution: a hominid skull found in Pleistocene gravels near the village of Piltdown. Arthur Smith Woodward, keeper of geology at the British Museum, assembled the fragments and, based on the geological stratigraphy of the gravels and the supposed stone tools found alongside, assigned the fossil an age of 500,000 years. His scientific authority made the dating unassailable, and for 4 decades, despite growing skepticism from many paleontologists, Piltdown Man was discussed in various scientific publications and included in textbooks as established fact. This was partly because the find satisfied English expectations of proving that the first European had lived in their backyard, surpassing the discovery of more recent hominids found in France and Germany. In November 1953, however, the fraud came to light. Time magazine published evidence gathered by distinguished scholars showing that Piltdown Man was actually a fake specimen composed of 3 distinct species. Laboratory tests showed it consisted of a medieval human skull, an orangutan jaw about 500 years old, and chimpanzee teeth. The apparent age of the specimen was achieved by staining the remains with an iron and chromic acid solution. Microscopic examination also revealed signs of artificial filling to shape it to match a plausibly human diet. The 2016 Royal Society analysis confirmed Dawson as the sole perpetrator. He had already falsified at least 38 other archaeological finds. From the Bulverhithe hammer to the Roman statue of Beauport Park, his thirst for recognition had deceived the scientific world for 4 decades, influencing racist theories about evolution and delaying understanding of true human origins. Continental Drift. Alfred Wegener, a German astronomer and meteorologist, published The Origin of Continents and Oceans in 1915, proposing that continents continuously changed position over millions of years. He had overwhelming evidence: identical fossils of the reptile Mesosaurus in Africa and South America, separated by 3,700 miles of ocean, mountain ranges that matched perfectly across the Atlantic, tropical glacier deposits that made sense only if the continents, once united, had split and drifted apart. The scientific world's response was disappointing. The president of the American Philosophical Society called Wegener's work pure fantasy. Geologist R.T. Chamberlain wrote in 1928, "If we evaluate this hypothesis critically, the theory completely collapses." Geologists didn't take him seriously. To them, he was just a meteorologist. But the main problem was that Wegener couldn't explain either how continents moved or why. His theory sought the cause of these movements in external forces like Earth's rotation and gravitational attraction, but all without providing real mathematical analyses. In the USA, the theory was widely rejected and by 1928 was already considered unacceptable by most geologists. Wegener, embittered, died in 1930 during an expedition in Greenland, completely ignored by the scientific community. Only in 1960, with the discovery of ocean ridges and paleomagnetism, did plate tectonic theory confirm he was right. The actual speed of drift, 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters per year. The mechanism, convection in Earth's mantle. It took 50 years to completely rehabilitate his ideas. Hey Curious Squad, before moving on, be sure to subscribe to our channel, clicking on the notification bell, and leave us a thumbs up so you don't miss out on our daily videos. Water memory. On June 30th, 1988, Nature published a bombshell article by Jacques Benveniste, an immunologist researcher in Paris, essentially claiming that water retained memory of substances it had contacted even after being subjected to extreme dilutions, when statistically not even one original molecule of the substance could remain. Nature sent a truly unusual investigative commission. John Maddox, Nature's editor himself, Walter Stewart, a scientific fraud investigator, and surprisingly, James Randi, the famous professional magician expert in debunking tricks and paranormal claims. On July 4th, 1988, they arrived at Benveniste's lab and for a week observed every detail of the experiments. Their decisive move was to introduce rigorous double-blind controls. They prepared test tubes with secret codes that no one could decipher, sealing them in an envelope taped to the laboratory ceiling. Thus, the researchers didn't know which test tubes contained the active dilutions and which were just plain water. The result was devastating. The miraculous effect completely disappeared. Of 286 blind tests, only 3 showed positive results, exactly what you'd expect from pure chance. On July 28, 1988, Nature published the definitive debunking. The results are a statistical illusion caused by observer bias. Benveniste lost credibility and funding, but until his death in 2004, remained convinced that water really did have memory. Neutrinos, faster than light. On September 23, 2011, physicists at CERN announced a discovery that seemed to demolish the foundations of modern physics. They had fired beams of neutrinos through the Earth from the Geneva lab to Gran Sasso in Italy, 454 miles or 730 kilometers of solid rock. And these ghost particles had arrived 60 nanoseconds earlier than light would have taken for the same journey. In percentage terms, it was a tiny difference, just 0.0025% faster than light, but the implications were catastrophic for physics. The experiment hadn't been done lightly. For 3 years, they had recorded 16,000 neutrinos, and the statistical reliability of the result was extraordinary. The probability it was a random error was 1 in 500 million. If it were true, Einstein was wrong. Special relativity collapsed. In theory, it opened the doors to time travel and the possibility of sending messages into the past. The physics world went crazy. In just 6 months, 15,000 scientific papers were written trying to explain the impossible. Some theorized that neutrinos were tachyonic particles, naturally capable of exceeding light speed. Others proposed they traversed hidden dimensions of space, taking shortcuts invisible to us. Physics conferences talked about nothing else. Then on February 23, 2012, came the cold shower. Meticulously rechecking the experimental apparatus, technicians found 2 embarrassing problems. First, a fiber optic cable connecting the GPS to the control computer wasn't fully screwed in. Just half a turn loose was enough to cause 73 nanoseconds of error. Second, an electronic oscillator that regulated timing was running slightly faster than it should. Once the cable and oscillator were fixed, neutrinos returned to behaving as Einstein had predicted, scrupulously respecting the universal speed limit. When other laboratories repeated the experiment with corrections, they confirmed there was no violation of relativity. The experiment's scientific director resigned in embarrassment. The final cost? Millions of euros wasted and thousands of theoretical physicists who had to trash months of work, all because of a poorly screwed cable. Gravitational waves from the Big Bang. On March 17, 2014, a team of scientists working with a telescope at the South Pole made an announcement that seemed to confirm one of the boldest theories about the universe's birth. They had captured what they believed to be the echo of the Big Bang itself. Primordial gravitational waves imprinted in the cosmic microwave background, that faint fossil light permeating the entire universe from its first moments. If true, they would have confirmed the theory of cosmic inflation, the idea that the universe expanded explosively in the very first moments of life. It was the discovery cosmologists had dreamed of for decades. The signal they had detected was surprisingly strong, much more intense than anyone expected, which made the discovery even more exciting. The most moving scene occurred when team members went personally to the home of André Linde, the Stanford physicist who had developed inflation theory 30 years earlier. They brought the news with a bottle of champagne, filming his reaction. The video of the professor moved to tears, hugging his wife while uncorking the champagne went viral with 3 million views. Physicists worldwide were euphoric. Stephen Hawking declared it confirmed his theories about the universe's birth. MIT said the Nobel was guaranteed. But on September 19, 2014, data from the European Planck satellite revealed an embarrassing truth. That primordial signal wasn't coming from the dawn of time, but from cosmic dust in our Milky Way. Interstellar dust fluctuating in the galaxy's magnetic fields produced exactly the same type of signal the team had interpreted as the Big Bang's echo. They had underestimated the amount of dust by at least double or triple. In January of 2015, after a joint analysis with Planck satellite data, the team had to publicly admit their error. They hadn't found any primordial gravitational waves. Their retraction in the prestigious Physical Review letters was particularly painful. They had announced to the world they'd seen the universe's origin, but had only seen galactic dust. The video of the emotional professor remains on YouTube, a memory of champagne drunk too soon. The Nobel, obviously, never came. The Ghost Pulsar. In January 1989, astronomers at Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory announced in Nature the discovery of a pulsar in the remnants of supernova 1987A in the Large Magellanic Cloud. It emitted 1,968.629 pulses per second, an almost impossible rotation speed for a neutron star. SN 1987A had been the closest stellar explosion, 168,000 light-years since 1604. Finding a pulsar and its remains just 2 years later would have been revolutionary. The 0.508 millisecond period implied a neutron star at the theoretical limit before centrifugal disintegration. Theorists worldwide went wild. Friedrich Carl Thielmann proposed strange quark stars. Edward Witten suggested deconfined quark matter. Over 20 theoretical papers published in 6 weeks. The signal was modulated with an 8-hour period, interpreted as a binary orbit. On January 18, 1989, after a night of perfect observations, the signal completely disappeared. Astronomers were perplexed. Black hole collapse, sudden glitch, extreme precession. February 1990, the truth emerged. A Redicon CCD video camera used to guide the telescope had an electronic defect in the readout circuit. It generated exactly that pulse pattern. When they replaced the camera and turned it back on for testing, the pulsar reappeared. Jerome Christian of the team admitted, "It's embarrassing. We wasted 300 hours of telescope time. The real pulsar from SN 1987A still hasn't been found." When the universe was younger than Earth. In 1929, Edwin Hubble made calculations that should have explained the universe's age based on its expansion. The result was shocking. According to his measurements, the universe was only 1.8 billion years old. There was just one small problem. Geologists had already proven, using radioactive dating of the oldest rocks, that Earth was at least 3.4 billion years old. How could the container be younger than its contents? The situation became even more embarrassing in 1937, when astronomers discovered stars in the Milky Way that appeared to be at least 6 billion years old. The absurdity was complete. Stars 3 times older than the universe containing them. It was like finding a grandmother older than her own house. Indeed, older than the entire city. Theoretical physicists bent over backwards to find explanations. George Lemaitre, father of the Big Bang Theory, proposed that perhaps the constants of physics weren't constant at all, but changed over time. Fred Hoyle suggested an even more radical solution. The universe was eternal and continuously created new matter from nothing. Paul Dirac, one of the giants of quantum physics, hypothesized that gravity weakened over time. Scientific conferences became battlefields between astronomers and geologists accusing each other of getting everything wrong. The solution came in 1952 thanks to Walter Baade and the New Giant Telescope at Mount Palomar. Baade discovered that Hubble had made a fundamental error. There were 2 different types of Cepheid stars. Those pulsating stars use as cosmic rulers to measure distances in the universe. Type 1 Cepheids were 4 times brighter than Type 2, but Hubble had treated them all the same. It was like confusing 60-watt bulbs with 240-watt bulbs. Obviously, all distance calculations were off. When they redid the calculations with the right stars, the universe's age jumped first to 3.6 billion years in 1952, then to 13 billion in 1958. Today we know the universe is about 13.8 billion years old, while Earth is 4.5 billion. Finally, the numbers make sense. Earth returned to being younger relative to the universe, and astronomers and geologists stopped glaring at each other at conferences, all because of confusing 2 types of cosmic light bulbs. Cold fusion. On March 23, 1989, in the afternoon, 2 chemists from the University of Utah held a press conference that promised to change the world forever. Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann announced they had achieved nuclear fusion, the same reaction that powers the sun, in an ordinary glass container on their lab bench. The setup was ridiculously simple. Heavy water, some lithium salt, palladium and platinum electrodes, and a small electric current. It was the nuclear equivalent of a homemade lemon battery. The 2 chemists claimed their apparatus produced 4 times the energy it consumed. Basically, you put in 1 watt of electricity and got 4 watts of heat out. Clean, infinite, practically free energy. They'd also said they detected neutrons and tritium, the unmistakable fingerprints of nuclear fusion. If true, every home could have its own personal mini-sun in the basement. The world literally went crazy. The University of Utah immediately requested $25 million from the U.S. Congress. Utah's governor allocated $5 million from state coffers. Japan, terrified of being left behind, invested $30 million creating an entire institute dedicated to cold fusion. Laboratories worldwide abandoned their projects to attempt to replicate the miraculous experiment. But within weeks, the fairy tale began to crumble. MIT tried the experiment and found no excess heat. Caltech detected no neutrons. CERN in Geneva was categorical. No fusion observed. The coup de grace came from nuclear physicists who made an elementary calculation. To produce the heat Pons and Fleischmann claimed, so many neutrons would have been generated that the two chemists would have died within minutes from radiation poisoning. The fact that they were alive and well at the press conference was proof there had been no fusion. By November 1989, the scientific community's verdict was unanimous. No convincing evidence of cold fusion. Of 19 American national laboratories that attempted the experiment, 0 managed to replicate it. Japan closed its expensive institute in 1993 after burning through $20 million with no results. What really happened in that test tube? Probably just mundane chemical reactions of palladium that the two chemists, blinded by enthusiasm, mistook for nuclear fusion. Pons fled to France in 1992. Fleischmann retired in 1995. Both died still convinced they were right. Fleischmann in 2012, taking the secret of cold fusion to his grave, or more likely, taking to his grave only the illusion of having discovered it. The planet Vulcan. In 1859, Urbain Le Verrier was France's most celebrated astronomer. 13 years earlier, he had predicted the existence of the planet Neptune using only pen and paper. He had calculated where it must be based on perturbations in Uranus's orbit, and when telescopes pointed in that direction, Neptune was exactly there. A triumph of pure mathematics. Now, Le Verrier had found a new mystery. Mercury's orbit wasn't behaving as it should. Its closest point to the Sun shifted slightly more than predicted, just 43 arcseconds per century, a tiny but undeniable deviation. The solution seemed obvious. There must be another planet, even closer to the Sun, perturbing Mercury just as Neptune perturbed Uranus. Le Verrier named it Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, appropriate for a world orbiting so close to the solar furnace. He calculated everything. It must be 1/17th the size of Mercury, orbit in 21 days, and be so close to the Sun it would only be visible during total eclipses or as a black dot transiting the solar disk. And miraculously, observations began to arrive. A French country doctor, Edmond Lescarbot, swore he'd seen a black spot cross the Sun for over an hour in March 1859. And during the 1878 eclipse in Wyoming, James Watson, a respected astronomer, announced he'd observed it near the darkened Sun. But there was an embarrassing problem. No one ever saw the same thing. Each observer reported Vulcan in different positions, with incompatible orbits. During the great 1883 eclipse in Egypt, 12 teams of professional astronomers scrutinized the area around the Sun with the best telescopes of the era. Result? Nothing. The 1900 eclipse was the most photographed in history up to that point, with hundreds of photographic plates covering every angle of the sky near the Sun. Vulcan appeared in no photos. Le Verrier died in 1877, still convinced Vulcan existed and that sooner or later someone would find it. For nearly 60 years, astronomers continued searching, compiling catalogs of sightings that never agreed with each other. They probably saw sunspots, bright stars near the Sun during eclipses, or simply what they hoped to see. The solution to Mercury's mystery came only in November of 1915 and had nothing to do with a phantom planet. Albert Einstein published his general relativity theory, showing that the Sun's enormous mass curved space-time around it. This curvature caused exactly those 43 arcseconds of deviation that had tormented Le Verrier. No Vulcan needed. It was just necessary to understand that Newton hadn't told the whole story about gravity. The planet that had never existed had still served a purpose. It had indicated a crack in Newton's laws that would lead to the greatest revolution in understanding the universe. Sometimes even scientific ghosts have their usefulness. Okay guys, is there anything you don't understand about what we've told you? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to learn more about solar system myths debunked, watch this series we dedicated to them.